Hi everyone, welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Bharara, your host, and before I move ahead, let me read out this very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. All right, after this very important disclaimer, welcome back everyone. I am your host Rajni Bharara, and today we have the privilege of hosting attorney Ruby L. Powers, a distinguished leader in immigration law and the founder of the acclaimed Powers Law Group, PC, based in Houston, Texas. Ruby is a board certified immigration attorney with nearly 20 years of extensive experience in navigating the complexities of immigration matters, including family and employment based cases, asylum, and deportation defense. Well, Ruby's commitment to her clients is unparalleled. She combines her professional expertise with personal insights as a child of an immigrant. Her compassionate approach has earned her recognition as a respected author and speaker, with her insights featured in major publications such as the Washington Post and the New York Times. She has been honored with prestigious awards like the AILA Advocacy Award and has been listed in the best lawyers in America and super lawyers. In today's episode, we will delve into recent immigration updates, what's next for DACA recipients in 2025, and Ruby will share her insights on evolving landscape of immigration policy and what it means for DACA recipients moving forward. So join us for an enlightening discussion that promises to empower and also to inform. And now, without any further ado, let me very quickly give a warm welcome to Ruby because it's her first time on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Hi, Ruby. Welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it's a pleasure having you. Um, I mean, it doesn't happen every day that we get a chance to actually do a show with you. So thank you so much for being here, Ruby. And now, guys, I would also like to tell you that Ruby will be sharing a presentation on recent immigration updates, what's next for DACA recipients in 2024. So without any further ado, let's get into that presentation. Let's listen what all Ruby has to say about the future for DACA recipients and what's going to happen in 2025. And Ruby, the stage is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Rashi. I appreciate it. So this is a hot topic, and we also are going to take other questions. I'll just briefly go over this. For those who this could be of interest, we don't know the future, but we can take a lot from the past and make some suggestions on what we think might happen. And so I wanted to share this, and you did a great bio intro of me, so thank you. Board certified law firm, 15 years old, Powers Law Group in Houston. I'll go ahead and keep going. So for DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, it was announced in mid-June 2012. I remember that moment. And it came live only 2 months later in August 2012. And it really gave a hope and for many people who were brought to the U.S. Many of them didn't even know they were not U.S. citizens. I remember having many consults with those, finding out for the first time when this program came out. And it was a way for those to get work authorization, a status, and be able to be in the U.S. for 2 years at a time. And it's been a great program for these last 12 plus years. But the thing is that we've seen a lot of different litigation. In September 2017, under the Trump administration, he was challenging the legality of it, which, the long story short, is it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said the reason why you're trying to get rid of it is not valid. But it didn't it didn't say you couldn't get rid of it. It just said the way you're saying the reason why is not good. And so then it was continuously challenged. And so basically from 2017 to now, it's been in litigation of some sort. And what that really means is that the people who were eligible to apply new DACA have not been able to since around that September 2017. And the thing is that you had to be a certain age to apply. and meet certain requirements. And so many of those people who were just not old enough to apply before September 2017 have not been able to take advantage of the program because it's been in litigation, and it continues to be in. And so in 2023, a federal judge in Texas ruled DACA illegal, and then it went up to the Fifth Circuit, which listened to oral arguments not too long ago. And honestly, it hasn't given a decision. The Biden administration, which really only has about 1 month left, does support DACA, but they haven't been able to get a DREAM Act, which would make it more solidified. See, DACA is part of executive action from the presidential power, from executive order. And so that is the thing, is that we really haven't had immigration new laws in such a long time. And so that's really where basically what happens is that sometimes the presidents are making opportunities based off of their executive power, and then it later gets challenged in other administrations. But ultimately, we've been waiting for Congress to actually act and make laws that apply to immigration, but we haven't seen that in many years. And so as we've seen it, if the Fifth Circuit were to rule against DACA, we know it definitely would go up to the Supreme Court. But we have seen the circuit be more favorable to, anti-DACA and more favorable to Trump mentality. And we've also seen the Supreme Court rule not in favor of DACA necessarily. And so we think that what could possibly happen is that Fifth Circuit will probably say it's illegal, move it up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court will either take it to be heard or not. But ultimately, the fact that right now all you can do is renew and advance parole is what you can do. You cannot apply new DACA. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that a lot of people are not in. The numbers have dwindled since originally. It's because a lot of people have been able to move on to something else like legal permanent residency. And so we're a little confused as to what's going to happen, because there was a lot of talk, maybe even just a few weeks ago, with Trump, President-elect Trump, saying that he was not so favorable about DACA, let's say, especially in the campaign trail. But then just recently, it sounds as if he's more favorable. So that's really where the confusion lies, is that we don't know what to expect. So the DACA recipients are primarily from California, Texas, are living primarily in California, Texas, and New York. And there's about 500,000 right now. The oldest DACA recipients is about 43 and a half years old. Many of them are married with children in school. Some could even be a grandparent by now. And they've been educated in the U.S. by virtue of being eligible for it. And so we see a lot of, unfortunately, it's like they're having to, build their lives on their home on the sand, because they don't know what's going to happen. And many of them are have American spouses, American children, and have been living in limbo. So this is that contradictory approach. We're honestly confused. We don't know what to listen to, because we've also seen this quote from Donald Trump: we have to do something about the dreamers. The people were brought here at a very young age. I've also heard about when I did a lot of advocacy in DC. I once heard in an office, they said that if we were to give a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, then it's a way. One sort of approach is that it's a way of rewarding the parents for bringing in children illegally, and because one day those children who could get a pathway to citizenship could petition for their parents. And so I think that's been one argument from the Republican side as to why they weren't pro DREAM Act. But I haven't heard that out in the world very much in the news, but that did give me a way to think about different perspectives. So it's confusing because what do you listen to? Is he pro DACA? Is he against it? What's going to happen? I mean, I think very likely it'll go to Supreme Court. Whether Supreme Court will take the arguments, I mean, listen to it and cert. I don't know, and I think that's where a lot of uncertainty is. But one thing that could happen, because they have the White House and narrow numbers, but in the House and the Senate, is they could try to put a DREAM Act through. And I don't know why they wouldn't if they finally could move it forward. So we'll see. I wish I had more certainty, but I think that's one of the things we're going to see a lot in this on this times is that we don't know. What was said on the trail is the campaign trail is going to be done. What's not going to be done. I think one thing just to be in a precautionary mode is to go ahead and renew DACA maybe early. You're supposed to do like 150 days. Some people are applying even earlier just to make sure that they get it because they don't know what will happen. Getting your documents in order, having a consultation, evaluating what your options are. And so that's really what we're seeing, a lot of people wanting to renew early. And we're also seeing a lot of people wanting to do the advance parole because one aspect is being able to apply brand new, and that you cannot do that right now. You cannot apply brand new DACA. And if you don't apply on time, if you have more than a year lapse between your DACA expiring and it's considered a new DACA if it's been more than a year, and you wouldn't be eligible for it because there's no new DACA. It's just renewals. And so that's the reason why it's so important to be timely filing. And the advance parole is an option that gives people a legal entry, if you will. And the biggest thing to note is that you would have to have enough time on your DACA. You would have to have a valid passport that has enough time on that. And then you would have to have either humanitarian, educational, or employment reason. And then by doing that, you would have to have the proper information, evidence to establish that. Now, one of the things to note is that it's been taking about 3 months to get the advance parole. And we only have a month left of this administration. So when the election results came out, some attorneys were saying, like, should we even offer this? Should we not? I think that as long as people understand the risk and consequences, then people should feel free to apply. But we don't know what will happen. We don't know if January 20th, he says no advance parole or something. But then again, the other thing I will say is it's important to note, where is the source of power? Is executive action, order? Is there a rule? Is it a law? Is it a policy interpretation? And honestly, this is huge, especially under the Trump administration, because then it gives you clarity as to how long and how it could be changed. Could it be changed with just the stroke of a pen by the president, or would it require a lot more action by multiple people or Congress? And so these are all the things to consider. And I think that's just a good takeaway in general as we analyze the future of so many things, including H-1B, other visas, interpretations. So much of immigration is not necessarily because of a law necessarily. It's about interpretations and policies and different executive actions and orders. So this was just an example of the documents that would be needed. We're still filing for folks, but we are letting them know that we might not get approved in time. And under the new administration, we don't know what will happen. The advanced parole, so if a person hasn't already gone advanced parole, traveled and come back, then you're really on borrowed time right now because we don't know what to expect. But if a person entered illegally, let's say one time, and then later got DACA, if they did have the advanced parole entry, then and they're married to a U.S. citizen, then all things being equal, no other complications, we should be able to adjust. Them inside the United States, and so that's why that legal entry is so critical. And hopefully, people have already gotten it. It also can be helpful for traveling if we're going to do like a perm process and trying to do consular processing with DACA, which gets more complicated. I think one thing to note is that finding alternatives. So like there used to be almost 1 million or so DACA recipients, and now we're down to 500,000. And I don't think that many it's because they had a DWI and they got disqualified. I think it's more because they were married to U.S. citizens. They were able to do the provisional waiver or the advance parole DACA belly, what we call, and were able to find a way to a pathway to legal permanent residency. The other thing would be is if they were the recipient or a beneficiary or a derivative of an I-130 or labor certification from April 30th, 2001. This is under the 245I provision. It's old. It would probably be because if their parent was a beneficiary and they were underneath it, potentially they didn't even have to be alive at the time. That could act as a legal entry. That gets more complicated, so I'd rather explain that in a consultation. Provisional waiver is still an option. The provisional waiver right now, but they were taking online. They're saying they're 4.5 years. The most recent waivers we got approved for 2.5 years. Just recently, we've seen a lot of approvals. Asylum could be an option as well, but the biggest issue is if you don't apply within 1 year of entry, you need to have an exception, changed circumstances, exceptional circumstances, and being in DACA up until it goes away potentially, and then applying could be considered exceptional circumstances, but that would be something I'd say look at the moment. The other potential thing would be like military parole in place. If your spouse or child is in the military or was in the military or a ready reserve or a vet, that could be an option. We also, during the Trump 1.0, I'm just going to call it that, the first administration, there was a lot of concern that the military parole in place would go away, but it never did. But I think I'm still going to bring that up because we don't know. There's also the U visa, which is a victim of a crime, but it has to be a specific a qualifying crime, and you have to get the certification. One of the things, a couple of things to note is that under Trump 1 is that he had said that judges could still deport someone even if the U visa is pending, which really gives pause because under Biden, they said, no, you can't be deported while it's pending. There's discretion, but that's not going to be their policy. The other thing is that, what do you mean pending? Well, it's because there's only 10,000 visas a year, and there's a lot of demand since this program came out around 2008, and so it's taking about 10 or 15 years to get a U visa right now. And those are the estimates with the application rate plus the visa availability. T visas are not met as much, so it's a bit faster. Like within a year or two, you can get them, more like a year and a half. But what those are sort of more of a unique thing. I think a lot of attorneys are screening better for those. You could be a victim of trafficking through labor or sexual. Doesn't have to be just one, but the labor could be like withholding payment, coercion, holding documents, and things like that. Cancellation of removal is when you've been here 10 years or more, good moral character, and extreme unusual hardship to U.S. citizen, spouse, parent, or child. That means it's more defensive. You have to be in court for you to proceed in that way. There's also special immigrant juvenile status, and that one is really more for younger folks and things like that. So it's a two-part aspect of family law, order, and then USCIS. I think just in general, what I'm telling a lot of people is that be prepared. We don't know step one, good, you're listening to this, good, you're looking into it. It's know your rights, know your information, know what your options are. Having a consultation with an experienced immigration attorney, I think, is so critical because I think a lot of times people just go with whatever they hear in the news, and sometimes that can be very sensational. And it's not specific to their situation. One of the best things that came out of DACA back, 12 years ago was that it got people going and having consultations. And I kid you not, some people were already eligible for things, but they didn't know because they didn't go to an attorney to evaluate, or they were given bad advice. And so that's what I would say is check the reviews, make sure that it's a reputable person, attorney. Make sure that they've had cases similar to yours, that they've had experience, and and if anything, go get a second opinion as well. It doesn't mean you don't trust them. It's this is your life and this is important, and you want to make sure that you have the right information that you're making that decision. And then write down what is being said, so that way, if some key facts were to change later, or laws or interpretations, it could mean that you might be eligible for something later that you didn't know about. So it's important for everyone to know what their rights are. And I mean, for those who are in the U.S. and don't have a status, it's important to have children or spouses, having guardianship arrangements, having wills, having documents in order. I think having the taxes and civil documents scanned in one place, so that someone could quickly email that to an attorney if they're hired, if the person's detained or held. Having the key numbers ready so that someone else can jump in action, such as maybe calling a lawyer that's been like pre-screened, and that maybe they're not hired, but at least the lawyer knows about the case and has document. For example, all my consultations, we keep notes and we have an intake. And so if someone were to call later, which, the firm's 15 years old, we can quickly pull that information, start from there. And that helps us to be able to move forward, especially if there was something we had to act quickly. And what I mean quickly is that if a person is detained, if, for example, they have a prior deportation order, like even just in the news, there was a woman with a deportation order and 2 U.S.-born twin children. They're only a few months old, and she was deported. And so, there could be options with stay of deportation, having ways to do prosecutorial discretion, but that's what we know now. But in the future, a lot of those things are going to change and be a little bit harsher from what we're hearing in the news and from Trump's campaign policies and promises. So we'll see what happens. And I think having a few trusted sources that you can always go to and stay up to date. For example, we team up with a lot of the consulates and nonprofits, so that we're finding out about things maybe before some things are out there in the news, and that can help us give that information to our clients. But also, we put out a lot of content in on our Facebook, our X. We're also on Blue Sky as well, Instagram and TikTok. We regularly have a lot of content, and we also have a newsletter in English and Spanish that is out there, and we just summarize the key points from those 2 weeks at a time, so that way it's sort of a digest, if you will, of what the key things to know are. So as there's information about how to reach us, our rubypowerslaw.com and our number. But for the most part, that's more about what's going on in the DACA. And it looks like we got a lot of questions too. So, and we can talk about non-DACA things as well. But if anyone has any questions, I'll do the best I can.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Ruby. It really helped a lot to understand each and everything about DACA. So guys, if you have any questions from Ruby that you would like to know, that you would like to get an answer of, so please make sure to comment down, make sure to post your comments in the comment section, and we'll be taking your question. Also, you can give us a call on the number 425-436-6335. And you can put the access code, which is 988888. Yes, make sure to dial this number and put this access code, and we'll put you through. Thank you so much. And Ruby, I would like to come back to you, and I would like to ask you a really controversial question related to DACA, because
Okay.
some people who don't side with DACA and who don't favor DACA call it a way to support illegal immigration, right? So, but what do you have to say, and what do you think? Does DACA encourage more illegal immigration, or does it provide like a humane solution for integrated young people?
That's a good question. So I see both sides, having even mentioned that what I had heard when I was at a Republican senator's office about why there's some pushback to having a pathway, because what they were saying is if we were to give green cards and citizenship to DACA or Dreamers, that there's no restriction on petitioning for their parents. Like with the special immigrant juvenile, you sever parental the relationship, so therefore you can't petition for the one that is the one you sever from. But with this scenario, you couldn't put a pause. I think the way I look at it, I mean, there's a way I look at, there's way different, there's a whole spectrum, right? Is
Right.
that the children were brought here with no control over anything. In fact, like I said, some of them thought they were US citizens because their parents didn't tell them otherwise. And then to wake up one day and find out that they don't have a status, like this was, just a wonderful gift that helped quasi remedy the dilemma. Because when I say quasi, because it's still in limbo and it's been pending 12 years, and unfortunately, the people who were too young to take advantage of it by the time Trump, paused it in September 2017, haven't been able to take advantage of it, and they are still very much dreamers outside in the world. I think it's a humanitarian quasi solution for something that we should have given more of a permanent solution. I think the when you do things like this to fix problems, it can appear from like one perspective that you're encouraging illegal entry or unlawful presence in the US. But the reality is that they were so stringent on the requirements. Like you had to be here by this date. It was like 5 years before the eligibility, and you had to be this age, and you had to go to this school or do this program. In fact, a lot of people, when I still talk to people, I'm like, why don't you have DACA? And they're like, oh, I didn't do this school, or oh, I didn't have enough evidence, or oh, I came like 2 weeks or 3 weeks too late or something. And there's still a lot, what we still call dreamers, the people like in theory, the large group, and then the DACA recipients are more of a smaller section. Anyway, I'm more of the pro-immigrant side, and that I really think the U.S. should have done something, should still do something more. But
I mean, as
I'm
you should,
glad that.
and I think as everyone should,
Mhm.
because America is the nation, US is the nation built by immigrants, right?
Right.
So people should be pro-immigrants. But then, how do we? Is there a way to, Ruby, also balance national security concerns with humanitarian considerations for undocumented youth?
Yeah, there is, but like, let's just go on DACA, for example. If you get a DWI, one DWI, you're out of it. You're
Yeah.
out. You're out of the running. I mean, like TPS is easier than DACA. DACA, you had to have, if you had more than like a few misdemeanors, you get kicked out of TPS, but they didn't specify DWI. I mean, like one DWI. I mean, I'm not saying that you should have that, but like that's an example of something that could put people in danger. Like you get one, you're dead, you're gone, on the DACA, for example. So like it is really stringent. And the fact that a lot of them have been in the US for so long, I mean, the DACA recipients that I know, they're like stellar, community members. Yeah, there's always the concern about, security. I used to work for the Committee on Homeland Security many years ago in DC. That's always a concern. But I think that the dreamers are really a subsection of those who are, quasi-American citizens in a way, because they've been here so long, and in the culture. And I think that's what makes it so much easier for them, to marry U.S. citizens. And it's almost like they're already citizens, but they just don't have the document to prove it. And I'm not saying DACA recipients are U.S. citizens, but because we don't want to say a false claim. But I'm just saying, like, culturally and educated and things. But yeah, there's always the concerns. But I think that they're not the ones that are the most prone to the issues that we would need to be as concerned about.
Right. I mean, also they don't know any other way, right? Because they have been there since the time they have been on this planet. So, well, there are still so many controversies and so many things surrounding DACA, but hopefully it's going to be better for the DACA, recipients. But also with that, and for the dreamers, of course. But Ruby, I would also like to know from you that people are really waiting until the court gives its decision, right? And it's going to happen in 2025. And now that the new administration has taken power or has come into power, not many people are. I mean, people are a lot more stressed about what's actually going to happen now, right? Because though they say that they are favoring that, but nobody actually knows what might happen. So I would also like to know from you that what role does the public opinion play in shaping the chances of, things coming in favor or things going against it?
I think it's huge, and I think that's where consolidate our power in that. I'll give you an example: family separation, the zero tolerance policy of like the summer of 2018, when it was happening even a couple of months before, but it really wasn't. People weren't piecing it together. People didn't know what was going on, and it wasn't until about mid-June when the reports were starting to get to the reporters, and they were piecing together what was happening. I went down to the border Port Isabel detention facility, and there weren't a lot of attorneys that were there initially because they didn't know the pro bono attorneys. It took a little while to get there, but they were there soon after. I did like 5 or 6 interviews. I don't know, it was a ton of media, and that day, after meeting with all those parents who had been separated and had no idea where their kids were, completely traumatized. And within like a day or two, Trump reversed the zero tolerance policy, and ACLU had the lawsuits that forced the government to put the kids and the parents back together again. And they had a deadline to get them all together within a couple of weeks. But for the public outcry, that wouldn't have happened. And that's really what taught me the importance of maybe you don't have the House, and maybe you don't have the Senate, maybe you don't have the White House, but you do have public opinion. And that's where we need to rally together if something is completely egregious. And I mean, we've even just seen recently, I think the last day or two, like tech companies are trying to rally Elon Musk and Trump to have more help in the H-1B or the skilled worker visas, because they know that there's such a shortage, and they need help to fill those needs. So they're using media, they're using their connections to try to get that attention. So those are just a couple of examples, and I think we need to band together, and that's really as an immigrant advocate, having to use media is to get out there, the stories out there is so critical.
Right. And it's only because of the public opinion and public views why the new administration came in power, right? I mean, very well put. Thank you so much, Ruby, for your answer. And now also because nobody's really sure that what might happen in the next year, what decision might come. So if it is negative, do you think that the DACA recipients should consider like alternate visa options or pathways to permanent residency?
Yeah, so that's the reason why I put that in and I see a couple of really good questions. I think we're sort of on topic right with what we're seeing right now. That's the reason why I put the alternatives there, is because, like I mentioned, there used to be about 1 million, now there's about 500,000, but a lot of them it's because they got the advance parole, they were married to U.S. citizens, or they got the provisional waiver and they're going that route, something along those lines. So I think the best scenario, or some of them have perm cases pending, and are trying to do the D3 waiver. And so what I would just say is that, yes, try to have a backup plan, be working towards that if possible for legal permanent residency. One of the questions was, how quickly could, when the new administration takes office, which is January 20th, how quickly could DACA protections be reversed or strengthened? Yeah. Should we expect immediate changes? Well, again, Fifth Circuit still hasn't made a decision. Then we've got the Supreme Court may or may not take up the question at all. They might just not even take it up. Supreme Court also sort of has their own schedule. So usually their decisions come out in mid-June, depending on what happens with the timing there, but what we have heard is that Trump is planning to have hundreds, I don't know how many, like a lot of executive actions and orders on day one. So I think that goes back to what I said, where does the power lie of the thing that we care about? Is it in a rule? Is it executive action? Is it order? I mean, we really can look to the prior Supreme Court decision as well and what was done since then. There's also talk about would there be, if they were to get rid of DACA at some point, and again, we're still waiting for the circuit, potentially Supreme Court, right? So you can't just completely get rid of it. They still have to go through the process. But what would there in the future, let's say it does go away, would there be like everything goes away this day, like the day your card expires, or would it be like a generous, phase out period of, I don't know, a year or something like that? All of those questions have been sort of circulated amongst the, immigration attorney community, and we're not sure what the answer is going to be. So, but I think it helps at least to think about those possibilities. But bottom line, if you have DACA, be thinking about what your backup plan could be if you could move to something else. And we also don't know what new things will come up. But what I will say is that Trump 1.0 got rid of about 50% of the legal options for immigrants. And so what I think what will happen is that a lot of the paroles that came out, a lot of the discretion that came out under Biden, I think a lot of that's going to go away. And I wouldn't be surprised if advance parole were to go away for DACA as well. So there's another question, like, I want to travel to see my family, but I'm scared it could affect my DACA.
Yeah.
I think that you should, if you want to apply for it, if you have your enough DACA time, enough passport time, enough, and get that advance parole out, see what happens. I know it's like, I'm telling you, see what happens, but I mean, the thing is, you don't know until you try. And I know it does take resources, filing fees and money and things like that. But who knows, maybe you could get it really quickly. Maybe there's no harm to it in the future. There was, I think Cornell University sent out, this was like about a month or so ago, a note to all their students, and they said, if you're going to travel, come back by January 20th.
Yeah.
And so I think when we heard that, we're like, oh, okay, we should tell everybody the same thing. I mean, honestly, remember when Trump went into office, there was the Muslim ban like that first week. And I remember trying to calls from friends and clients saying, my husband's mid-flight. What do I do? So that's why we're saying try to get your travel done by January 20th, because then we'll all sort of like hold down and figure out what's going to happen after that. I don't know. There's what we know and what we don't know. I can just tell you from experience and having gone through Trump 1.0, and then you have to make a decision for yourself.
Right. I mean, everybody's really stressed out and people are really worried what might happen, because the 1.0, everybody saw what all happened in the 1.0, and now they are really scared because he and his administration has gone out there and said each and everything what they are going to do. So now people are really worried. So, but we'll have to see what might actually happen, what might actually take place, and but I don't think so. But Ruby, before I take our other viewers' question, I would also like to know from you that people are really into this chaos mode and have gone very chaotic. So to help them, understand things, what would you like to tell them, that how should they ease it? And I mean, and be like not go into that chaotic mode and like be a little calm down.
Well, I think the best thing would be to, because see, fear is a paralysis. And that's what I really became so evident when I was at the detention facilities during the family separation era. And that was what it was done intentionally. It was done to cause chaos and fear to the parents as a weapon of emotional and distress. And unfortunately, that's a lot of Trump's modus operandi. He says a lot of different things, and then you don't know which one is he going to do and which ones he's not going to do. So I think there's a little solace in the fact that we've gone through one administration, so we have a little bit of an idea of his playbook. But I think he's had 4 years to get more organized, and he has got Stephen Miller in a higher position. And I think we're going to see a little bit more laser focus on whatever their intentions are. So I guess what I would say is know that they're not going to do everything. Some of it is hot air and a fear tactic. Um, having a consultation, second opinion, having your documents in order, trying to find good self-care coping mechanisms where you don't let this consume you.
Yeah.
And know that in theory, this should only be about a 4-year situation. Again, the judges he puts in place, the policies he put in place can last longer than 4 years. But when you, there's still a room for litigation. And in some cases, that litigation can stall for years as well on different fronts. So I think that's another thing to give you a little bit more pause and to know. It's just that the uncertainty. I mean, I've had a lot of clients tell me, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I'm losing weight, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, I'm trying to just give them as much positive. Let's look at whatever positives, and that, listing off what you're grateful for, the gratitude, I think exercise, I think that's really a lot of what we have to do in this next administration. Yeah.
Thank you for that positive answer, Ruby. And let me quickly take Girish's question. Okay, Rahul is here. He says, thank you, Ruby, for your answer. And then Girish wants to know that any changes expected to U visa under Trump administration, any chance of removal of bona fide determination review process? What do you have to say?
I think, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I think, okay, if you were just to think, how can you make lives worse for immigrants? And that would be one. It would be get rid of the bona fide determination. I don't know. Will he do it? Will he not? I mean, that was a great program that came out a few years ago, letting people have that work authorization while they're waiting that 10 or 15 years. I hope he doesn't get rid of it. I don't know what he's going to do. But if he were to say, how I want to make things worse for immigrants who are especially U visa applicants, that would be something that would probably be under his playbook. The other one I mentioned before is, saying that just because you have a U pending doesn't keep you safe from deportation. I think that is an easy thing he can tell judges, and then they would have to not use it as as a form of relief that could keep them here. So I don't know. I hope he doesn't get rid of that, but it's probably fair game as a possibility.
Okay. Well, Girish, I hope you've got your answer. Thank you for your question. If you have a follow-up, please continue posting the question. Meanwhile, let me take this other question. This is not related to DACA, but still I would like to take this. This is actually about H-1B. So ZQ says, is there a possibility that the H-1B visa program will be scrapped? I think I saw something about it here in another show.
Well, I don't think so, but I think he might make it more stringent. So let's go back a little bit. One thing that Trump did for H-1B, I mean, he did a lot of stuff with H-1B and employment based, but one thing he did was he created that registration process where the company just puts like a little form, it's not that hard, difficult, and says, hey, I want to put my hat in the ring for this applicant. And so then, then it was like a lottery, right? Chosen. And then only if you were chosen, then you would put the whole packet together. In reality, that made it a lot more cost effective for the companies, I guess applicants, and it was a lot less work for attorneys, because before we had to submit it for every single person, and then they would take the lottery from all the packets. So actually that was one thing that was more efficient. And then there was a lot more streamlining over the last couple of years as well. I don't think he'll get rid of the whole program. I think, and actually just like 2 days ago, there was DHS was strengthening the H-1B program. That's announced a final rule that'll go into effect January 17th, conveniently, 3 days before the new administration goes into effect. I don't think he'll get rid of the entire program. I think he'll get a lot of pushback from business. But I think he could make changes that make it a little bit more difficult to try to, I don't know, in his mind, protect certain U.S. workers. But I think there's a way to have a win-win where you're protecting U.S. workers, you're protecting the U.S. economy by allowing us to bring in skilled labor, and you're still allowing the H-1B program to flourish. So that's my answer.
Well, ZQ, I hope, I think that's a great answer. And ZQ, I hope you have got your answer. In case you have a follow up, please continue posting it. Meanwhile, let me take the question from Vikas. We already have taken Anusha. So, Anusha says the Biden administration announced new rules in 2024 that affect DACA recipients. Eligible DACA recipients can get healthcare insurance through the Affordable Care Act starting November 2024. A new policy on D3 waivers will help DACA recipients who have earned a degree in the US and have a job offer in the field of study to get work visas faster. What, according to you, will change in these rules?
So the have a job offer. I don't know. Some of these rules. I mean, there's a lot of new things. I think right now Biden is trying to get some things out like right now because we're like a month away. But what I've also seen is that a new administration can come in and find ways to try to reverse some of that activity. So I think it goes back to where's the source of power or where's this and how quickly could something be reversed. And so I think that's more of that's probably my answer. So we're just going to have to do a little bit of a wait and see right now. But one thing I will say is that when you do get a new administration, a lot of times it takes some things can be almost immediate. And then for the most part, it took almost 3 to 9 months to change a lot, for Biden to change a lot of the Trump policies. It's almost like turning around a cruise ship or something. Like you've got a lot of bureaucracy, you've got a lot of operations, you've got a lot of training, and you've got to like move things around if you are going to do that, like about face. And so and it's also about prioritization. What is really his priority? You hear a lot of talk about mass deportation. That seems to be a thing that was in the news a lot. I think now that we're getting closer to H-1B season, we're getting some of these rules from the Biden administration, where I think, and also the tech market is trying to advocate for more H-1B, skilled labor visas. I think that we're starting to hear that, but we don't really know what to believe that he's going to prioritize and what he isn't going to.
Yeah, only time will tell. But still, thank you so much for your question, Anusha. I hope you've got the answer. If you have follow-ups, continue posting them. Even after the show is over, we'll still try to give you an answer. We'll share the questions with Ruby, and we'll try to get an answer from her so that we can, reply to the comment. And now RK is also here. RK says, could we see more regulation to restrict immigration, such as removing H4 EAD, removing DACA, wage-based H-1B, remove the CBP1 app, etc.?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's fair game. I don't want to cause, fear, but the H4 EAD was a huge win, right? It's huge. But it took forever to get that. And I think that would be a way, if you were in the playbook of how can I make immigrants' lives worse, that would be one. Getting rid of DACA, that would be another. So a lot of, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. Like, how can I find a whole bunch of ways to mess it up? I think that's fair game. I think there's like a list. I'm sure they have. Steve Miller, somebody has a list. And they're like, okay, which ones can we do day one? Which ones are going to take a little more effort? Which ones should we focus on? So I believe that as we get closer to January 20th, we've got to sort of filter through the media and the news of what Holman and Steve Miller or Trump are saying, as to sort of try to get in the mind of what they're going to do. But That's sort of the way I'm approaching it. And then in the way, like if you anticipate, it's just like trying to mitigate risk. If
Mm-hmm.
you say, like for example, there's hurricanes in Houston. What do? What's your hurricane plan? What's your flooding plan? Or
Mm-hmm.
there's a freeze. If you think about how are you going to mitigate the risk or minimize the amount of damage, then that's the best way to look at it. It's almost like we're in defensive mode, right? Like I think under Biden, we were really, proactive, offensive mode. We could do stuff. There was more options, and now we're going to get back to defensive mode, and we need to be ready to think through what would we do if that were to happen. And then if you think through what the worst case scenario, then it gives you that power because you've had time to think through and you can start visualizing how you can try to find a backup plan for that.
Right, but Ruby, I mean, is there a possibility, or are there any steps that Biden administration can take to mitigate the impact of an unfavorable favorable ruling?
On which thing? On the
Let's
DACA
say
or
if,
which thing?
yeah, the DACA, yeah.
Well, I okay, like we mentioned, Trump's been very inconsistent, and just recently he sounds like he's a little more pro DACA this last like week or two. Like I mean, I've literally been shocked. Even I've talked to people, non-attorneys about it, non-immigrants about it, and they were shocked too. Um, I think in the wild scenarios that could happen, what if they were to actually pass the Dream Act? It might not look like the Dream Acts that the Democrats were proposing,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, if they have the House, the Senate, and the White House, I mean, what's to keep them from
Mm-hmm.
doing that? I mean, it might be more restrictive, might be more limited. Um, but I think you got on one hand, Fifth Circuit says no, Supreme Court says either no or doesn't listen to it, and Trump says let's get rid of this. Depending on the arguments, though, is there any more room for litigation? I think that's the other question: is would there still be room for litigation that could tell you whether or not there's room for more delay or not? The other scenario could be, maybe it's wishful thinking, but let's go there, is they pass a Dream Act, and then woohoo.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be more limited so that it doesn't encompass all the DACA people. And that's one thing that we have to remember, because under the Democratic Dream Act, it encompassed more than just the DACA recipients. And that was what was nice, because it was a bigger pool, because there's so many dreamers who haven't been able to take advantage of DACA.
Right, right. This takes me to this question from the viewer, Nidhi Sinha. She says, I have been a DACA recipient for years now, and I keep hearing about challenges and potential reforms. Should I be worried about losing my status in 2024? Or is there any hope for permanent protections this year?
Well, I think it's related to a lot of what we've mentioned already. Find a backup plan. We don't know what's going to happen to the Circuit Supreme Court. And there could be a hard stop, or there could be a phase out period. Could be stalled with litigation. And like we said, Trump seems to be more pro DACA right now, but we don't know if that's going to be the long haul. So, um, and I think one thing to ZQ's question up here about is new government going to be very unpredictable. I think we got to know that, like, there's checks and balances, right? There's the House, the Senate, the White House. There's a lot of lifelong bureaucrats who've been doing a lot of work, government workers in this space, and there's and the Supreme Court, and so and public opinion and voters, and just because a president's in for 4 years at a time, there's the House, which is in 2 years, and so that's where people really voice their opinion as well. And so I think the government is stable. It's just the unpredictable part, I think, is really on the on Trump's policies, is more of the some of the quasi unpredictability, but we do have a little bit more of a good playbook because of how we've seen him be the president before. So
Right. I mean, well, talking about Trump, he has always been unpredictable, and so we can't. I mean, ZQ, to answer your question, I mean, Ruby has already answered it, but thank you so much for your question. Let me quickly take Nidhi's question because we don't have much time. Nidhi says, moreover, what can DACA recipients do if they believe they have suffered discrimination in the workplace due to their immigration status? What do you have to say?
Well, I think this is a employment law matter that's not in my purview. I would say have a consultation with an employment lawyer and explain and go from there and see what happened. There was a deferred action for labor violations under Biden that came out a couple years ago, but I think you're better off exploring the employment lawyer first and then seeing if that other option is still going to be available. But that one is to help give people a status if they don't have one while they're waiting for possible investigation and litigation. So, yeah, so I guess what we have maybe one or two questions, or we're almost at the top of the hour. I don't know if we
Right.
missed something.
Yeah, I would also like to know from you, Ruby, that are there any, because, I'm sure a lot of people, and especially the DACA recipients, they want to know what legal resources are available for them. So if you can please mention, are there any specific legal resources or organization that DACA recipients should connect with for support?
Well, I think let's see. There's I'd say, you can always look to the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA, for information, reliable resources. They also have a directory for attorneys. There's a lot of different groups that support dreamers. I don't have like one specifically. Sometimes some of them are more regional as well. I would say that it is good to frequent the ACLU website and for like know your rights and seeing what they're up to in terms of like litigation, the American Civil Liberties Union. And then one thing I think is going to happen under Trump 2.0 is that the advocacy groups are going to do more of a divide and conquer approach for litigation, like federal litigation. So that we're not spread thin all over, but we're more of like a targeted. So different groups are going to take different litigation and to be able to divide and conquer. So AILA is a great resource. ACLU is a great resource, and then having having a good consultation with an experienced immigration attorney and a second opinion, I think, are all really good advice.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. Ruby, one last question before I let you go. So, because I know we have already talked about it, but any last suggestion or advice for the DACA recipients? What strategies should they consider to protect their legal status, given the ongoing litigation?
For all statuses, I think, or for DACA,
Particularly for DACA.
Renew early if you can, probably. That would be smart. I've already gotten your advance parole, hopefully, if you didn't enter legally, and have a consultation to evaluate what your backup plans could be, whether it's through if you're if you're married to a U.S. citizen, if you have a 21-year-old American child, if maybe your company wants to sponsor you. Could you maybe switch to some other visa? It's really important to know how much unlawful presence you've had and your entries and exits. So it's all connected. I would just say consultation, find a backup plan, evaluate, know what your rights are, and continue to monitor the news. But I think of all the communities, DACA recipients and dreamers really do have a place in a lot of Americans' hearts, and I think that they will. I'm hoping that it will continue to prevail in some respect, and that if not, maybe in this administration, in the future. But I mean, it does give me hope that probably 500,000 of the DACA recipients found another way. I think many of them did to a pathway, and so I think by having had this status, being able to have the advanced parole, more time here in the U.S., I think it's allowed them to have more options. And so I think that's just that having backup plans, knowing your rights, and continuing to stay abreast of the news and reliable sources, and making sure that you're not getting into that, that sensationalism that sometimes
Yeah.
can happen. So making sure you're level-headed, trustworthy resources. And I mean, I'll just say, like, we do have a TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Like, we're putting out a lot of content out there all the time of just I don't know if I could show that screen real fast, but like we want to be a resource for the community, even if you don't become a client, because we know that the information is power.
Right. Thank you so much again, Ruby, for all that information. It was so great having you. And guys, if you want to get in touch with, I think Ruby wants to share her screen, and also show you the platforms they share the content in. So Facebook, Twitter, and then Instagram, TikTok. So make sure that you follow all these platforms, Blue Sky. So make sure that you follow all these platforms, and yes, get yourself updated with everything that is going on in the immigration world. And with that, you can also, of course, subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, because we come up with these shows and we make sure that you are updated with everything that goes around in the world in the immigration field. So thank you so much, Ruby, for being here. And guys, if you want to get in touch with Ruby Powers, you can dial the number 713-589-2085. I repeat the number 713-589-2085. You can also email her. Her email ID is contact@rubypowerslaw.com. And you can also visit her website, which is www.rubypowerslaw.com. So make sure to get in touch with Ruby for anything related to DACA or any immigration related cases of yours. But thank you so much, Ruby, for being here. It was so great having you. I mean, it was your first episode, but I really enjoyed this doing with you. I hope you can be back soon. Thank you so much for being here.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm glad to get all these questions. I want to be a resource for the community out there. Really great questions. Really made me thinking on my toes. Rajni, thank you so much for having me and the team. And yeah, let's do it again. Love to be a resource.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words. And we are hopefully will be having you back, I think, now in 2025 next year. So until we meet again, happy holidays, happy New Year, and Merry Christmas, Ruby.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this amazing webinar. We are going to be back with Ruby with another great webinar. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel for all the updates, everything related to immigration and all, so that you receive all the updates regarding the shows with Ruby that we are going to do. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel. And for now, I'll have to take your leave. Wishing you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And also, I'm going to be back before that too, but still wishing you that. But for now, I'll have to take your leave. Bye for now. Take care. And always keep watching and keep subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show.